multiplying with decimals. The trick is, and I've intentionally asked you one that looks like this first to give us some access. The trick is, let's just do it like any other multiplication. So ignore the decimal places. Write it down. There doesn't have to be an order to it. 1.2 times 3.6. The decimal places don't need to line up. They do not need to line up. Very important. It's probably better if you don't line your decimal places up. Well, because the misconception a lot of us made occurred largely because we lined our decimal places up. If you line your decimal places up, Noah, you'll find that your decimal place will go there and your answers will be off. Doesn't really matter if they're lined up. I line them up because I like to be pretty and neat and concise, but just be very careful. Anthony, what's wrong? So, I do this, I ignore my decimal places completely. I ignore them completely. iPad's face down, fellas. I don't want them up at all. I haven't asked for them to be out. So I ignore my decimal places completely. Absolutely. So I just go through it one number at a time. I say, what is 6 times 2? I carry the 1. What is 6 times 1? Plus the 1? 7. Now, this is something a lot of us struggle with. It applies to all multiplication, not just multiplication for the decimals. Once we've done the 6, we need to replace it with a 0 below. Now it is very important that these line up. It's very important that these numbers line up because a few of us made the error. We did our right process, but we didn't have our numbers lining up properly. So 3 times 2 is? 6. 3 times 1 is?
3.
Now what's the operation that I apply between those two? Plus. Now, this is the part with multiplication. Where are my decimal places in my answer? Have I got any?
No.
What I do now is I say, well, how many numbers are behind the decimal place?
1.
In total. Not just for each number, behind in total. I've got 2. So I need to put a decimal place 2 in. And now I add, just as I normally would. 2 plus 0 is? 6 plus 7 is? Carry the 1. 3 plus 1? Great. 4.32.
I'm just wondering, does it when you do what I did and just do, say on the first one times whatever, and then find 20% of it and then plus those together?
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay, but it won't work for all of them.
Yeah, that's right.
It'll only work for the 1 point something, 1 point. Okay, so this one here, this is the point I was trying to make. I think most of us would have got something like this. The error that I saw very frequently was, when we're setting up our problem, a lot of people did 0.35 times 1.30. A lot of people did that. You don't need to. You can, it doesn't matter. You don't need to. The reason you don't need to is because what's my first line going to be if I do that? 0, 0, 0, 0. My next line then needs to have a 0 and then 3 times. Way too complicated for my liking. I would rather see 1.3. Does it matter that my decimals aren't lining up? It doesn't matter. I'm going to ignore them for the first half of the problem anyway. What's my process here, Ella? What am I going to do first? Three times 5, which is? What do I do with S1? Okay, 3 times 3. 3 times 3?
9.
Plus 1. So I take the 0, carry the 1. 3 times 0? Plus 1. Good. Now what do I do? What do I do now? Cross the 3 out? Yep. Add a 0. Why am I adding the 0? Why am I doing it? Don't just tell me that I should do it. Why am I doing it, Madison?
Because there's 2 numbers.
Yep, so I'm representing the fact that I'm now in the ones column, not in the first decimal column. So 1 times 5. 1 times 3. 1 times 0. Ah, good. So I don't need to write anything for that 0, do I?
5 times 3 is 5.
1 times 5, sorry. That's what I meant. Now, here's the hard part. Count the numbers behind the decimal place.
2, 3.
3. So how many decimal places should I have in my answer? Things behind my decimal.
3.
So where's my decimal place going? Who thinks between the 1 and the 0? Who thinks in front of the, between the 5 and the 0? Who thinks in front of the 1? That's good. A lot of us didn't think that a couple of weeks ago. Now what do I do? What's the operation? Add. 5, 5, 4, point. How good's that? What are we going to do now? What do you think I'm going to tell you to do now? Have a crack by ourselves, okay? So that's how we multiply decimals. I'm going to give us 2 problems to work on, then we're going to do some stuff on decimals dividing.